Welcome to My Life Chassidus Applied, episode 236. Special Untitled Kislev 90th Anniversary Edition. Being that this coming Thursday, the 14th of Kislev, is the 90th year anniversary from the marriage and wedding of the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin in Warsaw in 1928, Tafresh Peites. So consider this a special program dedicated to that. We will talk about that, but I want to go in order of the dates. Since today is Yud Kislev, the 10th of Kislev, we'll begin with that. This program is dedicated by Philip Namenworth in honor of the birthday of Leah Tiferet Bat Vega and Feivel Leib on Kislev the 13th, and the yahrzeit of Surah Risha Bat Leah on the 19th of Chedva. So, as I said, since today was Yud Kislev, the 10th of Kislev, 10th of Kislev is the Chag HaGeula in the year Tov Kuf Pei Zayin, was the year when the Mitler Rebbe was arrested and released from prison. But sadly, because the next year, which would be marking the first year of that redemption, was the day after his Histalkus, as we discussed last week, Tes Kislev, yesterday, this Shabbos, was the 9th of Kislev, which is both the birthday and the yahrzeit and Histalkus of the Mitler Rebbe. So since his redemption was literally that year, so the next year was a day after the passing, after the Histalkus, so you can imagine the celebration was somewhat muted. But it didn't take away from the power and impact of the celebration which can be compared to Yutas Kislev, the Alter Rebbe in prison, and coming out. Yutas Kislev will of course be coming in 9 days. So Yud Kislev has its own unique Chag HaGeula, as the Rebbe explains in a number of places, and I'm referring now to the Sikha I mentioned last week as well. Vayetze Yud Aleph Kislev Tovshin Mem Zayin. The Rebbe cites there that in some places it says that the Kitrug means the so-called a Rebbe is arrested. It's not just because of physical and material reasons down below. That something in heaven, there's some challenge on that Rebbe's approach. So Yutas Kislev had its Kitrug, which we'll talk about when that time comes. And Yud Kislev, the Kitrug was not on Chassidus, on the spreading of Chassidus that the Alter Rebbe was spreading in Yutas Kislev, but it was on the spreading of was on a Kitrug, on a challenge on the concept of Rebbe and Chassid. That's what it says in Beis Rebbe and some other places. Now the Alter Rebbe was also a Rebbe. So you have to say that something about the Mitler Rebbe, and we know that the Alter Rebbe appointed the Mitler Rebbe to be a madrich, even in the Alter Rebbe's lifetime, to be a madrich, a mentor and a guide to the Chassidim. So you could say perhaps that the development of Rebbe and Chassid in a more intense way was stronger by the Mitler Rebbe. I haven't seen that, but saying that the arrest was about Rebbe and Chassid, you could say that, or you could say no, the Rebbe Chassid part is equal in all Rebbes. But that happened to be, the arrest of the Mitler Rebbe was because of the different concerns that the government had, was in the relationship of the Rebbe and the Chassidim. As opposed to with the Alter Rebbe was the Messiah that he was helping Eretz Yisrael, which is considered an enemy of Ottoman Empire, an enemy of Russia, and that ultimately was really a challenge on the spreading of Chassidus itself. But additionally, the Rebbe explains in that talk, in that Sikha, that if the Geul of the Alter Rebbe, which was essentially a vindication, that spreading of Chassidus, that he began to spread Chassidus in ways that were unprecedented, is not just appropriate, but he should even do it more so, as he heard from the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, Alter Rebbe did. And then afterwards came another arrest and another liberation, so you have to say the second liberation was in a dimension that was not covered, so to speak, by the Alter Rebbe's liberation. And that is the spreading of Chassidus with Bina, not just Chochmah, but Bina. The Mitler Rebbe, when you see it even physically, you see, when you learn his discourses, you see it takes that idea, the kernel of an idea, the spark of Chochmah, which is the Alter Rebbe, and develops it and fleshes it out, where one page with the Alter Rebbe could be 10 pages or more by the Mitler Rebbe. So clearly it's another dimension. It's not just a matter of length in Kamus, quantity, it's also quality, developing it in a way that can be understood in a more powerful way, because when you develop something and flesh it out, it becomes more palatable and more relatable. So clearly that was also a challenge, because any time you have a divine revelation, especially Chassidus, which has the power to change the world and the power to bring Mashiach, so there is always the forces against that, so to speak, resist or put up a resistance. And you need to break through. So that's, and thank God in each case there was a geula that followed the momentary and temporary concealment. And that geula is a vindication, as I said, that we have a license now to spread Chassidus in even a broader way than at the time of the Alter Rebbe. And we see, the Rebbe says, that the Mittler Rebbe spread Chassidus a lot more than the Alter Rebbe did. Now obviously it's not a competition. It means the next step, Alter Rebbe developed Chassidus Chabad and taught it, but the Mittler Rebbe printed many Svarim, and the Hafotza of Chassidus, you see, beginning even stronger and greater, and both in quantity and quality, by the Mittler Rebbe, and the spreading of it. And obviously that has only grown till this day with each generation. And Deira Shvi, as the Rebbe puts it, so the Geula represents basically a broad opening of the channels, the expanses of the rivers, not just the Maya, not just the spring of water and short points. And even after the Alter Rebbe went out of prison, his discourses were longer, but really opening up the floodgates, if you wish, which is Bina, the floodgates of Chassidus, in a way that really without any limits. That is what this day represents, that redemption, which of course is relevant to all of us, that there's really no limitations at all. Now you can say it all began with Yud Kislev, which is the Rosh Hashanah of Chassidus. Yet Yud Kislev adds a dimension to it. Some places it says actually that Yud Kislev is the birthday of a Chassid, and Rosh Hashanah, there's the birthday of a Chassid, and Yud Kislev is the bris of a Chassid, because it's 8 days afterwards. Which also indicates, even though Yud Kislev came after Yud Kislev, so you see from that Yud Kislev has its unique, particular dimension to the point of birth, the birth of a chassid. And the bris, of course, as the Alter Rebbe says in Shulchan Aruch, is when another stage of the divine soul enters into us in a more manifest way. However you explain it, the bottom line is, in practical terms and applied Chassidus terms, is that Yud Kislev offers us the capacity to really open up the floodgates in every possible way and flood the world, as it says, Molo Oros Deus Hashem Kemayim Layam Mechasim, fill the world with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. Chachma alone is the nekuda, is the point. To fill the world in all expanses of it, that requires the rivers that go all the way to the farthest banks and reach the farthest and remote areas, both geographically and also spiritually, with the ideas of Chassidus and making it relevant to our lives, and the challenges and issues we address. So, of course, fitting to a program like this to pay tribute and acknowledge it and commemorate it on this special day. We also have this week is Parsha Vayishlach. Here again, the Rebbe explains the connection. Vayishlach, following last week's Parsha Vayetze, Yaakov leaving Be'er Sheva, Israel, going to Charan. Now Yaakov's coming back, and he's about to encounter his brother Esav. Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim. Yaakov sends Malachim, two interpretations, whether actual angels or shluchim, messengers, to find out what's going on, where Esav stands. And Chassidus explains that, of course, this contains the concept of shlichus, Vayishlach, to send, that each of us has to send out messengers to reach even places that where Esav is. Esav represents the material world. Ishmael Chama Yedid Tzayid, he was a warrior, and he knew the mastered the art of hunting. What does that represent? That represents the guf and nefesh habamis, the body and the animal soul that have to tame the elements and in some way tame this world and have to deal in an aggressive way with the challenges of life. So Esav is also a twin brother of Yaakov, and therefore both are necessary. But Esav represents the mundane world and dealing with the mundane world. So one could argue, you know what, I want to stay Ishtam Yeshiv Ahalim, I want to stay simple and innocent within the tents of Torah and prayer. Says no, you have to face your brother Esav. You have to face the world, the hunter, the warrior, and you have to find ways to persuade and influence and inspire him too to embrace on his terms what the mission that God sends us. And that's Vayishlach, not just Vayishlach, but to go into that world. So of course, if you talk about Yifutza Ma'anesecha Chutza, so Ma'anesecha, Mayon actually is Chachma. Mayon, the wellsprings of Chassidus. And Yifutza means to distribute, but to where do you distribute? You could say Yifutza Ma'anesecha and I wouldn't say the word Chutza. So we say no Chutza. The Chutza means the outskirts, to the outer recesses. And as the Rebbe adds, Chutza she'ein Chutza mimeh. Not just outer relative to the inner, which can be midas compared to wisdom, intelligence. Midas compared to mechin. The emotions compared to the cognitive faculties. Or it could be chutza just outside of your dalaramas, your little circle. Chutza could be your city. When you say chutza in the fullest the definition of the meaning, it means to the farthest outskirts, which is even to the Esav. And as the Rebbe brings in various different sikhs, that Chassidim, that the Razad, which is the brothers of the Rebbe Rashab, and of course this only accelerated afterwards, translated parts of Chassidus even for non-Jews to study. The Frierdiker Rebbe, B'Shivim Loshen, Be'ayir Heitev, Rosh Chodesh Shvat, began to translate it to many languages, Chassidus. And of course in the Rebbe's time, our generation, it took on a whole new dimension that Chassidus can be explained to every human being. The principles of godliness, the principles of divine unity, the principles of living up to the divine code, the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Neach, but infused with the spirituality and with the purpose for which we all were created to make this world a L'Sheves Yitzhara, a civilized place, and prepare it for the Geula and for Mashiach. So if you talk about Vayishlach Yaakov Malachim to Esav, Yifutza Ma'anesecha Chutza is essentially the same content. And you do it not just with spreading Torah itself and mitzvahs and tzedek and yeshu, justice and virtue and social justice and compassion and so on, but also infused with the soul. Because if you really want to permeate Esav, you cannot just follow the laws and the rules. That's action. But you also want to transform the personality and the mindset and the methodology. And that it should be, as the Rambam says, Lo yiyesha kol ha'elom el ladasas Hashem b'vad. That the business of the world will be nothing but to know godliness in all our ways and everything. As Rashi says in this week's chapter. So when Yaakov finally reconciles with Esav, with all and his fears are not realized that there have to be war. It was enough to pray and to appease him. So Esav says to Yaakov, let's now go together and join and live by side. Come live in Eden. And Yaakov answers that Visnala li'iti, I will go slowly. The children are young, the sheep are tender. So Rashi says, what he knew he was not going, so what, is he just lying to him? Rashi says, no, Yaakov is referring to the end of days. In the prophecy of Avadja, who himself was a ger that came from the Bnei Esav, from Edom. So Avadja prophesizes how there ultimately be at the end, there will be the final reconciliation, the final birur, what we call birur ha'umis, refinement of the nations, refinement of the materialism of this world, that the entire world will be busy with knowing God, including Esav and his descendants. So what we see here is this Pasha really captures the essence of what Chassidus came to do. Prepare the world toward the Geula, as Mashiach told the Baal Shem Tov, that when will I come? When he asked him, when will you come? He answered, when your well springs will spread outward. What's the connection? Because the well springs are the teachings and the guidelines and the directives that help prepare the chutzah, the outer outskirts, the world, for Mashiach and Geula. A world which will be filled with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. A world which will be busy not with materialism as an end in itself, but as a means toward divine consciousness. And therefore, by doing this, it's not just a Geula. You learn Chassidus and you spread Chassidus, but actually by learning it, you prepare yourself. You develop an appetite and you develop a refinement that makes you a keli, a container, to be able to contain what Mashiach is all about. It's a cause and effect. When people live Geuladik through learning Chassidus and acting on it, then that itself brings the Geula, Siba Masuv, cause and effect. So all this is captured in Yud Kislev, Of course, Yutas Kislev has many lessons as well, and even more so, being that it's the first Gula of the Alter Rebbe, and we'll talk about there. And there also the emphasis is on that it reached even the Goyim, even the Sari HaMelucha, the ministers, all talked about Hifli v'Higdil, how God did wonders. And we'll talk about that as we get closer to Yutas Kislev. Good. With that, let us segue to the 7th generation. From the Mittler Rebbe to the 7th generation, as I said, in the year Tafresh Peites, in Warsaw, in Varsha, the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin were married on Yudal Kislev, which this Thursday will be the 90th anniversary. We know the Rebbe emphasized all anniversaries are significant, but especially a round number that ends a cycle of 10, in this case 9 10, 90, has special significance because in Chassidus and Kabbalah, 10 is the end of a cycle. 10. So 90 years is a significant period. And what is its lesson for us? You could say it's an anniversary, fine. We remember the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin got married. It's a good personal event. What does that have to do with us? So we all know what the Rebbe said in Tafshin Yudalit. Tafshin Yudalit was 25 years from the wedding. That's when the Rebbe chazed the Maimel Chodedi and later edited, which is the Maimel, one of the Maimorim that the Friedrich Rebbe said at the Maimel, at the wedding, among other Maimorim, during that period in time. So from Tafresh Peites to Tafshin Yudalit, is Tzadik Tes, Tafshin Tes, is 25 years. And there, then the Rebbe said, this is the tog, this is the day that bound me to you and you to me. And together we will exhaust, and Eismater in the Golos, we will exhaust the Golos, and the Eibishter should help that we shall see fruit from our labor, from our efforts. Translated loosely from the Yiddish. Why is it the day that binds me to you and you to me? Because, technically, the Rebbe marrying the Rebbetzin essentially turned him into the son-in-law of the Friedrich Rebbe, which basically prepared him and the ground that he would be the next Rebbe. Of course, the Eibishter has his mysterious ways and could do anything any way he likes. But with Derech HaTeva, in the natural way, that's what it did. So the marriage of the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, the Rebbe's own words, not just our own conclusion, is a day that binds the Rebbe to us and us to the Rebbe. And then he continues and says that together we will exhaust the Golos, which is an interesting expression. Usually the Golos, the Mater Tunzes, the Golos, the Tirches HaGolos, the Golos is exhausts us. The Tzad HaGolos, the pains, the oppression, all that we went through during Golos. And here it's Eis Mater in the Golos, which is really hard to fully translate. Someone said to me, exhausting the Golos sounds good, it's a good expression. It means wear it down, really. It's like Mamish transforming it. Instead of it wearing us down, let us wear it down. And bring the Gula, obviously. And then the Rebbe concludes that God should help that we should see fruits, Pri. Pashas, why Pri? Because what is a chasana? Leads to Pruruvu, Umilu Sa'aretz, Molo Sa'aretz, V'kivshua. So even though the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin were not blessed with physical children, but as the Rebbetzin once said, all the children are ours. And the Rebbe acted that way. The second year after Tavshin Yud Beis came Erev Yom Kippur. So the Rebbe would always give a bracha to Klal Yisrael, to people who would come in. There were several groups that came in. The Rebbe would bless them after Mincha, Erev Yom Kippur, the day before Yom Kippur, as is the custom. But then, the second year, Tavshin Yud Beis, which would be the equivalent of 1951, because it's still not the change of the secular year. The Rebbe told the secretary, since the minhag is to bless children before Kol Nidre, so the children, the children are considered the students. Are the students. Anyone who teaches their its own Torah is considered like give birth till there's a pasuk in Bamidbar, right in the beginning. It says on Bnei and Elazar Summer, children of Adam, that they're Bnei Moshe made Adam and Moshe. But how they Bnei Moshe? They're not the children of Moshe because Moshe taught them Torah. So the Rebbe said, send in the Talmidim and give them a bracha before Kol Nidre. And from then on, this became one of the most sacred moments in Bochum's life, maybe the most sacred, because the Rebbe himself instituted something that the other Rabbeim did not do. They gave brachas to Bochum at different times, but to do Erev Yom Kippur. Now, the Pashtus is because they had their own biological children. That doesn't take away from all the students being their children, But however you analyze it, here it was clearly very overt. And the Rebbe is saying that this is giving a bracha to his children. And he did it with a whole Yivarech. V'yidaber Hashem al Moshe Lemer, Yivarech Hashem Yishmerecha, with Birchas Kayanim each year. The emotions, and I attended, I participated in several of them later years. In my years, was hard to describe that connection, especially knowing the Rebbe looking at his children and blessing them for the year. So Yudalat Kislev is the birth, is the marriage that gives birth to all the children. The connection we all have to the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin. So Pri Amolam is very fitting. Peiris, my Peiris mitzvahs. But also it says Peiris, Elatel, the essential, the Teldis of Tzadikim, I mentioned, is their students, their children. I'll also mention a story that I heard, and I confirmed it before I put it into the book Torah Meaningful Life. There was a woman who was a friend, one of the friends that came to the Rebbetzin. So one Yudalat Kislev, on the anniversary, she visited the Rebbetzin to give her mazel tov. The Rebbetzin showed her around the house, and there were different bouquets of flowers from different people who sent them. And the Rebbetzin showed her this bouquet, that bouquet. This woman, Rebbetzin Cohen was her name, saw in the kitchen, from a distance, she saw a really elaborate, ornate bouquet. But the Rebbetzin didn't guide her there. So she, curiosity or whatever, she said to the Rebbetzin, what about that? The Rebbetzin, as the man she was and the graciousness that she had, so she walked with her to the kitchen. As they got closer, she realized they're not flowers, but fruits, dried fruits in the shape of flowers. And the Rebbetzin said, in her inimitable way, "Das ist von man. This is from my husband," as she referred to the Rebbe. Interesting, fruits. So right away when I heard the story, fruits. We should see fruits from our labor, from our work. Not getting into what lessons we learned from this, whether the Rebbe didn't want to send flowers which end up wilting, where fruits can be used, can be eaten, and so on. But regardless, it was fruits, which is so much more apropos and fitting to a marriage that it produces fruits. Flowers are beautiful, and they have a beautiful fragrance, and they have a beautiful look. But fruits are perpetual, forever. And fruits create a fruit creates another fruit. So the lesson, my friends, is very straightforward to myself and to all of us. Yudalat Kislev, every year, it's bechein, its lesson to us, directive, is that we have to live up to being these fruits that truly give nachas and pleasure to the one that created these fruits. And we have to be a peri, fruits that create other fruits. We have to perpetuate the lessons and the message and the legacy and everything we learned and the directives and the actions that we were guided by. And in a way that's a fruit which is sweet, which is pleasant, delicious, and has an impact on people forever and ever and ever. That's our job, is to create fruits. That's the Yudalat Kislev message. Especially when it comes 90th year. So then it takes on a whole new dimension. A whole new dimension in the perpetuation of the fruit, with all the meanings in tzaddik, from the word tzaddik, as in the Rebbe turned 90, spoke a lot about the word tzaddik. Tzaddik is the letter tzaddik, is the number 90, and all the other interpretations in 90. So they all come together and intensify our activities in living as fruit should live. That when someone looks at you, they see, this is the fruit of a beautiful tree. And who's the tree? The Rebbe and the Rebbetzin. And a fruit that continues to have a ripple effect. Shliach Esha Shliach. Tefeach Hamnasla Tefeach. Not just that you do it, but you also influence that others become fruit by continuing and perpetuating and teaching these teachings to the point that it affects others, that they too live up to be such fruit. And when we do that in an effective way, this can have a viral impact to the point that it can literally transform thousands and tens of thousands and millions of lives. I want to add one more thing. Recently, it's always good to add something new. Recently was discovered in the archives of Rabbi David Raskinu, the head Tzach, from the time of its inception back in the Yuds. So he wrote to the Rebbe, the year was Tov Shalametes, 50th anniversary. In the 50th anniversary, of the Rebbe of Yudal Kislev, he wrote that he described a duch to the Rebbe what the Fabrengen that Sach organized in 770, and he spoke about there was the different people that spoke. They learned the Maimer from Tafshin Yudalit. Then they asked Rabbi Mentlik Olav Shalom, who was at the wedding. He attended the wedding of the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, to tell about his memories, what he remembered, and the great effect it had. Then he said there was a Fabrengen of the different Mashpiyim. It says, and Baruch Hashem, it was organized, we said L'chaim, and sang Nugunim. The Rebbe's response. Lepella, Shadafke Meragdin, Shehuske Befeire Shukam Bapom Benegeya, and the Rebbe circles the Chasana, Loi Nisker Kan. It's a wonder that specifically Meragdin, the dancing, that was mentioned explicitly and many times in relation to the wedding. You tell me that the person who was at the wedding spoke about the wedding, so wedding directly connected to dancing, that's not mentioned here. Interesting. Now you think about from halachically, Kesed Meragdim Lefnei Akala, it's a mitzvah to dance before Chosin and Kala, especially the Kala. Rikud. Singing, they sing by weddings. They say L'chaim. But Meragdin is missing here. A lot can be learned from it. That, Chassidus talks about Nigunim, you sing with your voice. It definitely makes a person happy. But Merikud, like it speaks in the Maimorim about Simchas Torah, Rikud is your whole body. Your legs are dancing and they lift up everything, even your head. And when you're dancing, everything gets lifted. The legs are lifting. So the joy permeates the entire person. That all of you, the whole person is consumed with this joy. Now, I don't want to speculate and go on a limb in saying interpretations, but I just want to share one thought that perhaps is connected to Pri Amole. You can live up to be a fruit and to be a product and to be a beautiful fruit produced by the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin of Yudalit Kislev, but not necessarily you see it permeating the entire person. When a person dances and doesn't just sing and say L'chaim, it permeates all of us, and not just permeates, it lifts everything up. It lifts you up, and you lift everyone around you up. So yes, this is a complete Yashlema B'derech Hefsher, but if someone has other interpretations, I'm sure it was not just a technical thing to dance. It had deeper meaning as well, besides the Meragdim, what Meragdim means, and the different, even the Maimorim of Bas Lagani talk about the Rikud of the different Tanoim, Amaroim, how they danced. And that was where the Shtusei, where they danced with the different meanings in Shtus, the Gedush. They danced in ways that were completely unlimited, unbridled joy and celebration. So I'm sure this Yudal Kislev, there's going to be a lot of dancing to fulfill all the lack of dancing to the previous years, even back then, 40 years ago, when this answer came out in Tavshin Lametes. Okay. So, since we're talking about marriage, we're talking about fruits of a marriage, I thought appropriate, though this is a topic I've talked about many, many times, I thought appropriate to address one lesson in shidduchim and marriage, which of course is an issue that affects us all. What are the most vital things to look for in a potential shidduch? Before I go there, I just want to give some cross-referencing and let me make some announcements. I always cross-reference. Remember, this is episode 236. So clearly we've talked about a lot of topics, and many of them overlap with these topics I'm addressing now. So I always refer you to our rich archive, which has all the episodes. If you go to meaningfullife.com/mylife, you can find all the previous archives. And last week I neglected to mention, I already got a bunch of emails and saying, why are they not time-stamped? They are time-stamped, which means that you don't have to listen to the entire hour. If you go to the video on our site, as I said, meaningfullife.com/mylife, and you click on the YouTube version, only YouTube has this feature that's actually categorized by topic, and you can click straight to the timestamp, which means the place, the time, the moment, the minute, and the second when this topic is being addressed. So we made it as easy as possible. So the episode, the topics of Yud Kislev I discussed in episodes 91 and 140, Vayishlach in 141 and 190, and Yudalit Kislev in episodes 141 and 190. So that complements everything I said here. In addition, you go there, you'll also find a forum where you can submit your completely anonymous and confidential questions at meaningfullife.com/mylife. And you can also access all the essays of the previous 4 years, the Chassidus Applied My Life Essay Contest, hundreds and hundreds of very interesting and diverse essays coming from all the spectrum of the entire spectrum of writers and ages and professions, and all can be found there. I'll also mention it's a good opportunity im ein chit im ein teire is the expression, a little off, but that's the teichen. And that in order to be able to do these programs, we need to have the funding for it. So these programs are free and are funded by community sponsored. So please consider to be gracious in giving us a donation or dedicating a program in memory of a loved one or in honor of a loved one. It's a great way to achieve several things at once, both to honor someone as well as help this program continue and expand. Okay. So with that, let me go. As I said, I want to address one thing that since it's Untitled Kislev this week, 90 years. So in episode 441, I spoke at length a bunch of items about shidduchim, questions that came in. But one I just want to go over again, and it's more elaborate there, but I thought it's appropriate because it's two answers from the Rebbe that I want to share. What are the most vital things to look for in a potential shidduch? So the first one, someone writes to the Rebbe that they're dating somebody. When you date someone, and there's many different parts of a human personality, among the many traits that a person houses, which ones are the critical ones to look out for? How can one know if the qualities that you're looking for are finding perhaps trivial and are not essential? Okay. And there I cross-reference other episodes, which I'm not going to do a double cross-reference. And here's the Rebbe's answer. In Yoneh Shidduch, the Rebbe says, especially in this case, the primary thing is that it should be consistent with what it says. Isha Yirus Hashem hitisalo. A Yisha Yirus Hashem. What do you praise above all? Is her Yirus Hashem, being a God-fearing person, with all the meanings. Kail Kamubna Poshet, and which includes obviously Milas. Balas midas tevis, someone that has midas tevis, kind person, has good midas, kind, gracious, compassionate. I'm interpreting. But kol hashar, the Rebbe says, everything else, he be'erech hanal, compared to the above, toffel the toffel. It's secondary, the secondary of secondary. The Rebbe says, when you will focus on them, on what I just wrote, you'll definitely find, God will definitely help you find a good shidduch quickly, which will also include other miles besides the ones I mentioned. And then the Rebbe concludes, you should strengthen in your daily commitment to Torah mitzvahs, which includes betochen b'Hashem, trust in God, which will eliminate the pachad, the fear, to make a decision regarding a shidduch. Okay. So, there you have it. As the Rebbe says, sheker achem v'hevel hayefi in the early part of the pasuk, the Rebbe doesn't mention it here, the Rebbe explains, doesn't mean that chen and yefi don't have value. They have no value if it's just hollow and has nothing else. But we find clearly in the Torah, Motza chen b'nei Hashem, chen. Someone has chen. You fast teya, v'yasfas mara, you say ran Sora, Rivka, Rochel. So to say that sheker achem v'hevel hayefi means just that, no, as the Rebbe explains a number of times. It means when you have the Yisha Yirus Hashem Yitasal, Kim Yiddish Yirus Hashem Yitasal, the main thing, then of course it elevates that the beauty is then of course with a deeper internalized meaning and not just a superficial thing. But you see here clearly what the ikad is. Another answer that I thought is worthwhile reading, and that is is shalom bayis understood in the same light by all from Jews, or does Chassidus have a unique approach to shalom bayis? And the Rebbe has an interesting letter that talking about the greatness of shalom bayis, which is domestic tranquility and harmony, and says, I'm not going to read the whole letter, but he's saying it's so fundamental that every effort in that direction is worth it. He says, it's obvious from your approach that you're taking an approach of the Anshe Musar to be just critical and see the negative things and flaws in, and emphasize the negative things in your spouse. So it says, Ain't shaken all over, we don't cry over the past, but from here on, take on the Darkei Chassidus, the way of Chassidus, to show and indicate on the qualities the person has. And that if you actualize those qualities, everyone will be helped and grow in this relationship and family. So I just wanted to add that because since Untitled Kislev, so Chassidus Chassidus of the Rebbe and Rebbetzin, how that spills over in how we look at a marriage. We could obviously always focus also on negatives. That doesn't mean we ignore them, but the main thing that Chassidus teaches is looking at everything with the right eye and the positive. Okay, with that, let us move to some other questions. And again, I'm a little behind the questions that have been coming in, but I believe I'm catching up. So since there's a crisis going on in Israel, I mean, there's always challenges there, and so a few questions came in. One is, what was the Rebbe's view on dealing with the Arabs? Okay. Rabbi Jacobson, what was the Rebbe's view on how to deal with the Arabs who keep bothering Israel? Did he agree with the approach of Rabbi Meir Kahana, Olav Shalom, which is to transfer the enemies within Israel to another place? Did the Rebbe ever meet with Rabbi Kahana? Thank you. Okay. So first of all, I've addressed this topic extensively in episode 29, all the way back then, but also in episodes 26, in episodes 30 through 33, 85, and 88. But let me address this. I'll sum up what I said there. I'm not going to go over the whole thing because I discussed it then. As I said, because it's timely, it's always worth refreshing our memories and reconnecting. I mentioned before, im ein chitim ein tere. I meant ein kemach ein tere. That kemach is, chitim is of course the wheat. Kemach is the flour. So I just want to correct myself, but this goes back before. Okay. Well, it was good to say it accurately. So the Rebbe's approach is actually quite surprising. Many people would think that by the Rebbe, the Arabs are just enemies and that's all. And you have to kill them all. God forbid. The Rebbe said a number of times, Shalom, peace is not just peace for the Jews, it's peace also for them. And that when you compromise on things that are truthful, which means Israel belongs to the Jewish people, it was given to us from the beginning of time. And the Siman Shin Chavtez that the Rebbe brings a separate issue, which is no matter where it is, when there's danger, you have to protect yourself. When you compromise on vital things like that, then you're not just hurting yourself, you're also hurting those around you. And that if Israel stood strong, that would create peace. It wasn't just stand strong and just fight wars. That itself would create a situation they wouldn't keep on arguing and ultimately would bring peace. And the shedding of blood of any individual, Jew or non-Jew, is a tragedy. Now that doesn't take away from their hatred and so on. But how do we deal with that? With their hatred we cannot correct. That's their education system and that needs to be dealt with by whoever has to deal with it. But by being strong, it actually would be good for everybody. By being wishy-washy, or one day you compromise and no one knows where you really stand. So of course, your enemy is going to constantly want more. You give them an arm, they'll want a leg. And the Rebbe firmly believes that if they stood strong after the 6-day war, without any compromises, there would have been peace, because people would accept it and realize as soon as you see there's somewhat of ambiguity, that's where the problems begin. And in many ways, the Muslim world, the Arab world, knows what it says in the Bible and the Torah. They know about Israel as being a land given by God to them. And they're religious in many ways. Many times more religious and committed to that, unfortunately, than others. So they understand that. But when they see that the people who are given, the people of the book who are given this promised land, don't treat it that way, so what do you think they're going to think? So they feel that we are the chosen by God to take it. So you have to behave with Ge'en Yankiv, with a pride, and with a confidence, and with strength. And peace comes from strength, not from weakness. That's the bottom line. Peace and strength, not a weakness. You don't give land for peace, you give peace for peace. Because land is irreversible. Peace, yes, cultural peace, peace treaties, all fine. But giving land for peace would be like someone saying, give me your living room, then I'll make peace with you. No. I'm not asking you for your living room. Don't ask me for mine. And we'll make peace. Peace for peace. There are many ways to deal with peace. There's trade, there's cultural, there's academic, many things that can be done. That's the short of it. As far as Rabbi Kahana goes, yes, there is perhaps some common denominator, but Rabbi Kahana believed in open demonstrations to defy the government and to aggressively say, let's kick out all the Arabs, let's pay them off. The Rebbe did not believe in those approaches. He believed the government should have a different position. He did not believe did not accept defying the government in public, and so on. He challenged the government and spoke about it publicly, but they should change policy, not through demonstrations and not through force. Are there some commonality? Yes, the idea that by all means help the Arabs relocate after the 6-day war, whether it was from Jerusalem or other places, in a peaceful way, and help them find a place where they can live peacefully and comfortably instead of feeling that they're always like refugees or second class and so on. So that, of course, the issues are much more complex than just what I'm saying here. But regarding this issue, this is a summation, and I refer you again to the episodes I just mentioned. As far as their meeting, I'm not sure. I know Rabbi Kahana lived in Crown Heights. He definitely came to Fabrengens. I don't know if they actually met. I believe yes, but I have to do more research. And if anybody has any information on that, please let me know. I know that there was some tensions because Rabbi Kahana did some things like demonstrating across 770 once. He had a very aggressive approach in your face. But, I don't put them in the same league that Rebbe and Rabbi Kahana. He had his approach, but it was not necessarily the Rebbe's approach. And the Rebbe's b'darkenem, b'darke shalom, with full firmness. And as I said, he had definitely positions that many of them would have worked and perhaps could have been embraced. But I would rather, his Chassidus applied, I'm talking about the Rebbe's position. Since he has the question, I'm commenting on it. Okay. In other words, I can defend and present the Rebbe's position. I don't know Rabbi Kahana's position in detail. I just know some general things. So it's really not my platform, but I just referring to it because it was asked. Okay. Completely another topic, which is really an outgrowth of previous programs. And then we'll do some follow-up. And that is, since we're talking about orthodoxy, conservative, I guess somebody wrote the question, one of the local shuls I attend now, one of the local Orthodox shuls I attend now, hired an assistant female rabbi. Am I allowed to attend the shul, or has it lost its Orthodox status? So the truth is, as you know, this program, this is not a psak halacha program. And I don't want to render halachic decisions. There are times there's some overlap, so I address it. Here there's some overlap between hashkafa and halacha, but there's a very specific reason I don't do it, because this is not the place. Halacha needs to be asked by the proper Peiser, who's an expert in the area, someone you trust, someone who has the credentials, and someone who can look and listen to all the nuances and come away and give you a psak halacha. To do this on video, on a program where I'm not hearing all the details, and additionally to the fact that I'm not an active Peiser, is not appropriate, and it's not my role. And it's not even the scope of this program. It's not the goal of the program. So this really requires asking a competent Rav, Peiser. I forgot to read the last line of this note, which is maybe the easiest one to address. Thank you. Your show is awesome. Thank you very much. Okay. But since it did overlap some of the conversations we had in the previous programs, I said I myself checked with some rabbanim, and here's the consensus. It all depends of what is the role of this assistant female rabbi. And I'm not going now into the reasons why a woman can be a rabbi. There's halachas and poskim that talk about it. You can look it up. That's not the question, so I'm not addressing that. So what I got the consensus was, if it's someone who is actively working as a rabbinic authority, rendering halachic decisions, being masacre kedusha, which means officiating at a wedding, or even speaking on Shabbos as an authority, a rabbi, then it challenges perhaps the status of the synagogue, because it's not following the halachos of what Torah says. Whether you should daven there or not, of course, your decision, but if you're asking, that's what many of the rabbis told me. If it's someone, on the other hand, that's only on paper, like an assistant rabbi to counsel and make make other people comfortable in the community, and someone that serves as a mentor, then the rabbis I spoke to said they don't see an issue, and to make someone to stop davening there, not necessarily. Now, obviously, shuls have different standards. If you're talking about a Chabad house or a shul that has higher standards, they can see that also as being something that may not be the right thing to do. But to say you can't daven there because you don't have, the woman is not behaving as officiating as an authoritative rabbi. Okay, that's the general gist of it. Okay, as I said, please don't suffice with what I just said, and don't base any actions based on what I just said. I gave you an approach, which I did check and confirm with rabbis, but go to a rabbi if you have these questions to ask specifically the circumstances, exactly what your question is, and that's what you should follow. But there is some hashkafa, some so to speak methodology, some how do you translate hashkafa? So approach. That's why I did speak about it. Okay, let's do now some follow up, and I reserved some time for it because I always like to do follow up because there's always details, things I may have missed, or things that people add. So first there was the discussion. I'm sad to go back to the Pittsburgh massacre a few weeks ago. We discussed in episodes 233 and 234. So someone asked the question, should Jews arm themselves? What is the Jewish halachic perspective in Chassidic Chabad regarding the Jews arming themselves for protection? Maybe learning self-defense. We can't just sit by on the side when attacks come, or chas v'shalom wait until something happens to ourselves or loved ones to stand up and do something. We cannot either rely on miracles or say, if Hashem wants it to happen, so let it be. What else do you suggest I do? So here too, I am not going to render whether you should arm yourself or not arm yourself, not because it's necessarily a halachic question, but because it's case by case. You know, there's no question self-defense. Al pi halach, you have to protect yourself. And nothing more important than protecting lives. Whether every person should go to shul with a gun, I would probably suggest not. Should they have security guards that are armed, not Jewish security guards? By all means. And if they're covert, I mean covert in a way that no one knows who they are, but people see who they are, but you don't have to walk around with a rifle necessarily, so it doesn't have to throw any fear into anybody. But to have that is absolutely prudent, and it's a legitimate thing to do in the situations that we're in, whether we like it or not. As far as individual goes, look, I don't carry a gun. I don't have one. Is it because of my own fears? I don't know. I never really thought of it. So you have to feel, if you feel comfortable that you want to carry a weapon or have a weapon in your home or in some other way, remember there's also dangers involved, a sakana with children, etc. I think this requires a lot more shikul hadas, which means weighing all the sides and probably getting good objective advice. And it's case by case, who you are, what the situation is. You know, it depends what community you're in. Like places where there is, God forbid, more domestic violence, it could be that should be something that maybe some people should do. But I don't want to really talk black and white because I think it would be unhealthy and irresponsible to just come out and say, Rabbi Jacobson said everybody should go carry a weapon, or Rabbi Jacobson said no one should carry a weapon. I don't think I'm in a position to say that. I really believe it's far more nuanced than that, based on circumstances, based on individuals, and based on who, not everybody's made out for it. So I think we have to be careful when we're addressing something like this. But overall, to be prudent, listen, we learned from this week's Pasha. Yaakov prepared to meet Esav 3 ways: with prayers, with a bribe to appease him, and he prepared for war when you're necessary to do so. So, for example, in Israel, especially people who are in the army or in the miluim and the reserves, they definitely have a weapon, and they need a weapon, part of their position. There are people who are part of the Jewish community police, like Hatzolah. So Hatzolah is not for security, but security guards and so on. Obviously, there's a reason for that. But should every individual be armed? That's something I think needs to be weighed back and forth. And I think I just addressed it in the most general sense. And obviously we have to do everything b'derech hateva, naturally, to protect ourselves, and God should protect us all. That l'chadchil le'yosem alecha, like the Rebbe once said about the Hatzolah ambulance outside. Just the mere fact it's standing there is paz b'saleh, means that alone already prevent that you have everything taken care of, that you don't actually ever need to use it. So let's hope that's the situation. We should never have to talk about these things, and definitely not have to deal with something, God forbid, any form of crisis or tragedy. Another person asks, isn't every murder a hate crime? Hi, Rabbi Jacobson. As a Frum Lubavitcher woman living in Crown Heights, I am of course deeply saddened and troubled by the recent massacre in Pittsburgh. We have had our fair share of violence in Crown Heights, something that troubles my husband and I and keeps us focused on protecting ourselves and our family. I've been thinking a lot about hate crimes, and I've been thinking that really every murder is a hate crime. Murder can only come through the hatred and disregard for human life. Every day people are murdered in our country, so while of course crimes committed to a certain ethnicity, race, group feels horrific, I'm fairly certain that the family of any person murdered feels no less saddened or horrified by the life of their loved ones cut short, even if it wasn't a hate crime, quote unquote. And the tragedy is there even if the murdered person had no family for whatever reason. All this got me to thinking about how as Jews we are to be a light unto the nations, and how we as the Frum community should be doing more to teach the non-Jewish world of the sanctity of life. All humans are created in the image of God. As one person commented on your show, we should be doing more to teach the 7 Noahide laws. But value for human life is, as it is in the image of God, is in a way the fundamental principle of the 7 laws. I've also been thinking a lot about our Second Amendment rights, and how unfortunate it is that New York prevents us from defending ourselves with a concealed firearm. It seems that in the reality we live in, with such disregard for others, we should be allowed to defend ourselves, just knowing that this 5'7", 125-pound woman might be packing heat, brings a smile the way you described it, may be enough to deter some ne'er-do-well from trying to attack me. It seems vital to me that all shuls should have members who have weapons. If congregants in the Eitz Chaim shul were armed, this man wouldn't have been able to carry out the atrocity to the same level that he did. Of course, I'm not blaming the victims, but why should we be victims? Why should I worry when my husband's going to shul that some thug with an illegal weapon might shoot at him and he'd stand there defenseless? Do you agree with all of this? Am I off course? With respect. Your points are very well taken. So first of all, absolutely, every murder is not just a desecration of life, is a hate crime against the human, it's a hate crime against God, because God created that human being. And look at the sanctity that we treat somebody who passes, especially murdered. So murder, yes, is absolutely taking a life. You're taking a life that God put on this world, so everyone's a hate crime. So truthfully, that word hate crime that the American government uses is obviously with more intense laws when it comes, you're targeting a Jew because they're a Jew, or someone else because of their ethnic or race or religion. So I'm not saying that a regular murder is less of a murder, but that has a particular thing, especially in this shadow of the Nazis. So you can imagine why there is more emphasis. But I don't think it takes away, as you put it very accurately, so I totally agree. I also completely agree that the greatest preemptive measure, the words of the Rebbe, teach children about that there's an eye that sees and an ear that hears, that there's accountability, that human life is sacred. The Sheva Mitzvah, which is the foundation that every human being is created in a divine image. The moment of silence. So I totally agree with that. Regarding the Second Amendment rights and weapons, I already addressed that before. I do agree we have to do whatever is possible to protect ourselves and shuls and so on. But individually, it's a personal choice. I'm not going to tell you not to do it. I'm not going to tell you to do it. I think you have to ask around, think what you're comfortable with. Should people carry around a gun with them? Not everybody's made for that. I can tell you for sure. So I'm not going to go over that. So you're not, of course, I agree with basically what you say. And thank you for weighing in Now, okay, here we are. Conservative shul. You avoided answering whether a conservative edifice where they pray is holy like a shul. Is there Aron Kodesh holy like an Orthodox synagogue? Referring to last week's episode. Yes, I did avoid it, but not in any in a very deliberate way, not by accident. Because as I said earlier, I'm not here to paskin halachas about shuls. What defines a conservative shul? Is it the mechitza alone? Is it the mixed seating? Is it the woman officiating? There's a lot of details, and it needs to be addressed with a competent rabbi. And I addressed the concept of Kiddush Hashem, of Eden, that has nothing to do which type of environment they got killed in, whether it's in a marketplace, or in this place, or in that place, and it shouldn't even be a factor when we talk about this matter. I also mentioned the Rambam that talks about what makes something, what is accepting Torah min Hashemayim, and all that comes with that. So I think I said enough. As far as a final status about a certain type of shul, I defer you to the rabbis to ask them that question. Okay. Now regarding another follow-up, shidduch. How much to reveal about a family member? This was back also 2 weeks ago. Hi, Rabbi Jacobson. First of all, I would like to express my thanks for what an amazing job you do in relation to this podcast and forum, which I should add, all the programs besides being broadcast live and archived are also available for free download for podcasts on the go, in your car, exercising, whatever it is that you're doing. So, continuing. Having been introduced to this podcast roughly 3 months ago, I can safely say I have not missed a week of listening. I think the Divrei Torah questions and of course your responses are insightful, empathetic, and inspiring. In relation to episode 234, questions related to shidduch, you mentioned that detailed potential personal issues should really be addressed on a case-by-case situation. In general, should an issue have a direct impact to the shidduch, it should definitely be discussed and addressed prior to an emotional connection occurring. I'm wondering if this extends to one's family members. For example, if there is or was, God forbid, an issue with alcoholism or gambling within the household, for example, a mother or father, should this be made known to a potential shidduch in the same way? I recall that you mentioned that issues that do not directly impact the couple need not necessarily be made known. However, although the couple are not marrying each other's family, but rather each other, they do not live in isolation, and there certainly will be times, be it regularly or occasionally, that the couple will be with the family or family members in question. How should we go about mentioning this in a shidduch case? Or is this not relevant to the couple and it need not be mentioned? Once again, thank you for all your good work. Much hatzlach. Okay, very good question. Let me address that, and then the other follow-up I will do in the following weeks. The same rule applies. If a parent, for whatever reason, has an issue, but the child that is in question, the shidduch, if is that issue at all bear on the child and bear on the shidduch? It may completely have no connection. For example, there are situations where their parents may have parents have gone through something difficult, Holocaust survivor, may have strong impact on the respective shidduch match. Sometimes it does not. So it's something that one has to research. And to say that every issue that parents have, then why not grandparents and great-grandparents? How far do you go? Remember, Avram's father was Terach. He was an idol worshiper. He was an idol manufacturer. So I'm just pointing out, we have to know that parents are not necessarily reflective on their children. And here, it's a step away. With a person themselves, obviously that's the person you're going to potentially marry. So clearly we take more discretion there. With a parent, if someone came to me, I would ask stronger questions. Not just whether there's an issue, maybe it's an issue that happened when they were a teenager. Does it impact? I'd look at the other siblings in the family, meaning the siblings of the potential shidduch. Do they have healthy marriages? Are they healthy people? It's very important to put things in context, because if not, you could end up putting everything under a microscope and destroying every shidduch, because who does not have some skeleton? So I'd say yes, it could be relevant, it could not be relevant. Because remember, parents' behavior affects their children. But many, many things that parents do not necessarily affect, or at least don't affect in a way that's significant. So this too may be an issue that should be brought up. The question is when. Should it be brought up before the discussion of the shidduch? Maybe not. Maybe in middle. When someone's doing the research, if they can find out as much as possible about the parents, by all means, if you can find out. But we're going to talk more about the responsibility of once you do research, which I didn't discuss. So I would just say, if you're going on a date, do you have to tell somebody? Let's say you have no issues at all, or nothing significant. You have to tell your prospective shidduch, the person you're dating, the man or woman you're dating, about your parents' issues, case by case. And here I would take be more cautious on saying, not necessarily even more so than if it's yourself, obviously. But this comes down to, if you feel it impacts your life, then it's something you should share at some point. It doesn't have to be in the first date. Because the person is marrying you, and they should know that they're marrying a person that's impacted. You may have an over-attachment or an influence of parents, or sometimes your parents you feel intervene in your life more than you want to, and you're taking care of yourself, but you want to know, your husband should know, your wife should know, that I have an issue with that, but don't worry about it. I'll protect you from them, or we'll both protect ourselves from them, if necessary. So these are all questions, and that's why it's very hard to give one black and white answer. Okay. Let's stop with the follow-up, because there's a few more on shidduch and one more on something we discussed last week. And I will go now to the Chassidus question, which, of course, being a special 90th anniversary Untitled Kislev program, is on the content of a marriage. And here's the question. What does Chassidus add to the understanding of marriage? Very good question. So let me give you still a background and just add a few key points. Obviously, I'm not going to go through a whole elaborate everything Chassidus says, but something interesting. I always noticed that for the first time I started looking into Chassidus is that we have, of course, Maimorim on all the parshas, Bereshis, Sefer Bereshis, Shemois, Vayikra, Bamidbar, Dvarim. We have on Shir Hashirim. I'm talking about Teireh and Lukut Teireh. We have, if you go further with Eira Teireh, we have also, and the Alter Rebbe and Mittler, Anach, Nevim, Ksuvim, a lot on Tehillim. We have on the spot. Then we have the Drushim connected to Yom Tevim, with the Drushei Pesach, or Drushei Shavuos, or Drushei Sukkos, or Drushei Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkos, Purim, Chanukah. Then there's a whole category called Drushei Chasana. The discourses connected to Chasana. And they interestingly were said on Chassidus. Starting from the Alter Rebbe, he would say long discourses at Chassidus, and we have these drushim. And they're collected in the sperm that are printed today. Mittler Rebbe, even more so. Even more Maimorim, longer Maimorim. And all the Rabbeim had Maimorim at the Chassidus. Not only their immediate family, their children, which were short, they said Maimorim, but also Maimorim, they said at relatives. I think there are even Maimorim, I didn't look into in detail, even of Chassidim or others that they were there at that wedding. So there's a whole corpus, a whole body of material and literature just on Chasana. Now if you go down the line, you have Maimorim from the Rebbe Marash by Chasanas, the Rebbe Rashab, of course, the Rebbe Rashab Maimorim by the Friedrich Rebbe's Chasana. Samach to Samach, Nun Zayin, earlier Hukah Chosin is also Nun Zayin, all by the Maimorim, he said, by his sister's wedding, by his daughter's wedding. And of course, connected to Yudal Kislev, the Friedrich Rebbe said a whole series of Drushei Chasna. It came out, Drushei Chasna, at the Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka and the Rebbe's wedding, which we have and we learn. So we have a whole, as I said, a whole body of material on the Chassidic addition to Chasna. A few brief nekudas from different Maimorim. I'm just going to select a few. Samach to Samach Nun Zayin, of course, is a really powerful one in this regard. But all of them have tremendous chidushim. One of the things, the concept of the reunion, that a marriage is not a union but a reunion, is straight from the Alter Rebbe's Maimorim. Soulmate. Based on the fact that Zochar and Nekeva Borei is a male and female, and they're both soulmates. So when they meet, they already had met. 40 days before children are born, it's already announced. Their souls had a connection before they get. Then they both are planted into different families, and they complete strangers. Then they meet again. It's a reconnection. So that Chassidus explains the reunion. It's a beautiful concept because it means these souls were destined for each other. And now they're reconnecting, and that's why there's such a great simcha, because you're getting the yichud of something that was so separate, that was meant to be united. Remember, all male and female were once one. In a sense, Adam and Chava were one entity, then separated. So you can imagine the Gedla Simcha, the Alter Rebbe says, when you bring together two parts of one whole. So it's even a greater Simcha. Another concept, of course, Chassidus addresses is Zohar Malchus, that the Chas and the Kala are not just a union of two people, but it's a union that goes through all the levels of Seder Ishtalshlus. You can say when a couple come together at a wedding, the ripple effect of unity ripples through all the cosmos to the highest levels, which is why by the brachas, the Sheva brachas, we don't even talk about the individuals. We don't even make mention of their name. We talk about what happened by Gan Eden Mikedem, and Sameach Chosim V'Kala, Meheir Yeshama will be when Mashiach comes, because a chassan is not just two individuals. All of existence experiences a unity. And then, of course, the connection to the chasana between the ultimate chasana and kala, God, and the Jewish people. Matan Torah, Yem Chasanos is Matan Torah. So when you learn Chassidus, what it does is it adds dimensions, not just to the beautiful element of two people coming together, and it's a beautiful marriage, and you said al Torah v'mitzvahs, but as the Rebbe said, Kufi Shemo Orim b'moyer shebet illuminated by the luminary of Torah, Zui Pnimis HaTorah, which adds the inner dimension to a marriage. And I just mentioned a few points, and of course there are many, many more that talk about what simcha is. The concept of simcha peretz geder is one of the chidushim, samach to samach, nun zayin, which simcha breaks through all gedorim, through all barriers, and all the other things that Chassidus talks about. There's much more to be said, but suffice for now. And as I said, the Ma'amar and Drushei Chasna are all available for all to read and derive more messages and lessons. Plenty of material if you have to ever speak at a wedding or a Sheva Brachas or an engagement. There's a lot of material out there. So now let's do the essays. Essay contest. 3 essays, as we always do. And we're winding down this year's contest. Soon will be the new contest. So the first one is the power of speech and emotion. Helena Peiser, age 20, Memphis, Tennessee, a student at Goldie Margolin School for Girls. The power of speech and emotion. Words of speech, what is it? Hashem's given us the ability to speak, see, and hear every bit of feeling that we feel through our emotions and actions. She tells the famous story of the Baal Shem Tov telling everybody to hold their hands together. And one of them began screaming in terror, but the Chassidim had seen actually this person mutilated his adversary. Now, Yem writes the following: we can learn from this incident that every thought or spoken word can have a major effect, either in a physical form or spiritual form, which can be interpreted only in a higher and more spiritual level. And goes on to explain how to coping strategies for negative emotions using speech and emotions. The conflict that exists with very good case studies. I like that always. And avoid shaming the public, which means saying something that would shame somebody. Healing and gaining trust back through words. Learning to trust in yourself. And a beautiful concluding poem, Purifying the Kind Soul. Very, very well done. Thank you. I was very touched by this particular essay. And this essay and all essays can be seen as they're posted now every week at My Life at meaningfullife.com/mylife. The essays 2018, as well as previous essays. The next essay that I shall read is Review Precious Gems by Chaya Mushka Litzman, age 16, Spring Valley, New York, student Muncie based Chaya Mushka. A Chabad Chassid strives to become a better person. This is a constant struggle that is encountered in day-to-day life. With the help of the rabbeim, we are able to conquer our daily struggles. One example of a struggle is judging favorably. It is hard when you only see something from the outside, you can't see inside, and then jump to conclusions of why the person may not be acting as you see it. And goes on of not judging people, making sure that you don't know what's happening, using a letter from the Rebbe connected to Lag BaEmer, what the Talmidi Rabbi Kiva did, and how we should learn from them not to show respect to each other. And in general, the V'ahavta Kamecha, the Maimon Nachaltzu, another very succinct and good essay about the power of loving and kindness and not judging people. A tremendous lesson, even if we've heard it many times. It's always good to read again, especially in the voice of a 16-year-old. And finally, the third essay, Beyond the Thought to Instinct, F. Chedva Shagalov, age 19, Brooklyn, New York, student, B'nai Chumash Academy. In today's day and age, we are taught that everything is about understanding. Therefore, if we don't understand something to be right, we shouldn't do it. We are taught that our mind needs to control our heart. Yet, if such is the case, why do we do at the times when we don't have the luxury of thought? What do we do at the times when we don't have the luxury of thought and the time to really think something through? In other words, something has to be done quickly. Goes on to discuss this concept of thought versus deliberate thinking something through versus instinct, and developing healthy instincts that, especially when they're needed, and that Moich Shaltalav is not just an act that you do, but you can actually train yourself and condition yourself to come to a point of having healthy instincts. Okay, nice essay as well. So thank you for that. Thank you for all the essays. Always great to see. So let us now sum up and conclude. As we enter this week, starting with Yud Kislev and coming from Tes Kislev and coming from Rosh Chodesh Kislev, then Yudalet Kislev 90, the 90th anniversary. Then we'll be going to Yud Tes Kislev, a month filled with Chassidic holidays, called the Chodesh HaGeula, and concluding with Chanukah, of course, which is another Geula, and connected also to Primis HaTeirah, Shemen, oil in Teirah. So what richer month do we have in Chassidus applied in emphasizing for us our mission is to take the rich resources that was saturated and taught us from all the rabbeim and to create fruits. First of all, us walking fruits, Chassidus fruit of the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin, Chassidus fruit from all the rabbeim, and teaching others, in the broadest possible way. Takeaway message from this week's episode of My Life Chassidus Applied, episode 236. We're here every Sunday from 8 to 9 p.m. As I said, you can find all our archives and all these programs at meaningfullife.com/mylife. I encourage you again to sponsor and dedicate and help us continue and expand the program. Everyone have a very good Yom Tov Dika week, a Simcha Dika week, a Mazel Tov week, beginning with Yud Kislev, but concluding with Yudalet Kislev, the 90th anniversary, and not forget the dance, Meragdin, as the Rebbe said, with all the meanings with that dancing includes. A good Yom Tov and a good Vach. A freiliche Vach.